I think contemplation is one of the most underrated practices for this. Um, we tend to be driven by what contemplative writer Martin Laird calls the reactive mind. And society today is possibly full of more noise than ever before. I mean, we've got the turbulence of social media, news, politics, entertainment, the noise that penetrates us externally. And these are really bushes to keep us hiding and preoccupied from the stuff that probably scares us the most, which is our own psychological interior clutter, our own interior noise, trauma, shame, guilt that we're running from, dark voices that we confuse with the voice of God. And this is one of the reasons I believe we adamantly avoid silence. But if we want an Ice Cube's chance in hell of any sanity these days, the church must return to some form of contemplative practice. Isaac of Nineveh famously said, above all things, love silence. John of the Cross says silence is God's first language. I really think that it's not just words of God, all creation, words of God, just words, but a silent, wordless, all creation participation in God that is needed most. But contemplation is not about formulas and methodologies. It's about a relationship and communion that transcends communication. And this is what we're ultimately created for. The practice of God's presence truly is a key for us to slow down, turn off the noise, close the door, and learn to gaze upon it. I mean, the word for contemplation in Greek is theoria. It means gazing. It's a place of devotion and wonder. But this is not just an escape from the world. Thomas Merton says that we don't go here to escape people, but to actually find them. So taking some time each day, if possible, for silence and forming a contemplative practice. This is not something that's just for monks or ascetics. William McNamara, Carmelite priest, he says, the mystic is not a special kind of person. Each person is a special kind of mystic. We aren't trying to have some kind of lofty esoteric experience or fit an experience of God into what we think it's supposed to look like. In contemplation, we're just letting go of thought, even our highest thoughts about God, which can still be limited idols, and basking in God himself, losing sight of what we think experiencing God should look like or feel like, or comparing ourselves to others' experience. And by the way, the practice of the presence of God is not getting the presence of God, but coming more aware of his presence. And when we do take some time for the practice of his presence, well, what happens is we tend to acclimate more with that presence, recognize that presence more and more in our daily lives. Theophan the Recluse says, God should be with us like a toothache. Now, that's not a cheerful analogy, a toothache, but you get the point. The practice of God's presence is about learning to resonate with, taste, acclimate, almost as this frequency, even somatically, bodily, growing in a recognition, I dare say familiarity with his transcendent presence. And silence, unplugging, this helps us to just kind of untether from the world, let go of the noise and the dark religious voices that aren't his, but are nevertheless banging around in our heads, and just handing this stuff over and taking time to saturate in his love. But what this does, this acclimation to the Spirit, actually opens our eyes, I believe, to recognize him where he's always been, which is everywhere, in the mundane, in the ordinary world all around us. I mean, the earliest church fathers were both theologians and mystics. They were contemplatives. You couldn't have one without the other. But this seeing him in the ordinary. See, Holy Spirit wasn't just in the conference meeting or in the levitation miracles or whatever. Holy Spirit was there in the conversation when you were driving your kids to school, in the gardening, in the baking, at the 9 to 5 of your daily routine. C.S. Lewis said it's not just in the miracle where God's glory is evident, but the real glory is in the mundane, in the ordinary. And we tend to miss that. Maximus the Confessor, he introduces this concept called theoria physique, contemplation according to nature, which is this stage in a contemplative journey where we're learning to sense God in all of creation, in humanity. Some actually would consider this the highest form of contemplation. But again, this isn't reserved for experts, right? Children are quite adept at this. But there's something of slowing down and paying attention. And ultimately, all things, including us, are designed to testify to the incarnate Word himself, the Son, Jesus Christ, the image of the invisible God. And that's the image in whom we are made. So this theoria physique, this contemplation according to nature, it's that aspect of the journey where we recognize him, the logoi, the words of God, all creation, words of God, coming into context to the logos himself, present within them. He's embedded in all things, and he's a person. So yeah, I think slowing down and taking time with his realities are very important.